Welcome to the second video in my playthrough and lore discussion of Dishonored. The second mission is quite long, especially as regarding lore, so I'm going to be breaking it up into probably 3 parts of no more than 1 hour each. Also, I hope that the audio is at least a little bit better on this video. I changed some settings and got some accessories that will hopefully make it sound a little bit better. So, alright, let's go. Hound Pit's Pub. Hidden Allies. Hidden in an old bar on the river, your new allies have plans to share with you. Meet with the Loyalists' inner circle to learn what they have got in mind. Sadly, I can't do anything about my voice. I have, as they say, a face for radio and a voice for print. So here's our game hub, the Hound Pit's Pub.
This is the Hound Pit's Pub. Closed for business, half the district marked off as dead from the plague. We're right under the Lord Regent's nose, and he don't know a thing.
Across the river you can see Donald Tower, Coleridge Prison.
Of course, if anyone finds out what we're up to, the Watch will break in with swords drawn. And now that you've escaped, the Lord Regent's going to be tearing the city apart. Take you up to meet Admiral HAVELOCK and the rest of the Loyalists. The Admiral's a man to be reckoned with. If anyone can help you find that missing girl, Lady Emily, and clear your name, he can.
See a nice early industrial boat crane there. Okay, so this is the Old Port District. And in previous times this was actually a very wealthy, kind of fashionable area for merchants and aristocrats where they would go shopping. That was long ago. As you can see, that's no longer the case. We are very literally underneath the Lord Regent's nose. Let's explore around here a little bit. Old Dunwall brand whiskey. Some TYVIA ore here. For some reason, TYVIA ore is very highly prized and highly sought after. Not sure what it's made of. There's a little hovel that Samuel's built. He can't sleep in a building too long at sea. So here's a map. It's kind of a generic map. It shows the Isles and the PANDYSSIAN continent. Learn a little bit more about that in a bit. And as you can see, the Isles are actually kind of an inset there. The actual size is this little tiny thing in the corner here, compared to the much larger and very distant PANDYSSIAN continent. Let's take a look at this book here, Mysteries of PANDYSSIA. Excerpt from a book on the far continent, PANDYSSIA. At the Academy of Natural Philosophy, they speak of the PANDYSSIAN continent as a place of wonder, where all of life has entwined and blossomed across eons, producing a vibrant ecology unrivaled in the civilized world. The overseers from the Abbey of the Everyman, by contrast, talk of horror and heresies, of cults of sub-men engaged in brutal, perverse rituals. The few who have traveled to the far continent and come back to the Isles, those who have actually touched the soil there, have returned with notes that describe vast deserts, deep jungles, and outlandish creatures that defy belief. Once in a generation, a great effort is mounted to build a colony there, in hopes of this someday growing into a port city to rival Dunwall itself. But to date, these attempts have all ended in madness and failure. So yeah, that tells you pretty much everything you really need to know about PANDYSSIA. It's kind of an Australia on steroids where everything is trying to kill you. And Anton Sokolov actually made a journey to PANDYSSIA at some point in the past, brought back a lot of plant and animal species for study. Almost everyone else on the crew died. He wrote a massive book about it, and you see chapters of it throughout this game and also in the second game. I don't think we have the whole book though. So there's the Hound Pit's Pub. It's the building's actually supposed to be about 300 years old, so it's definitely a well-made building. The only other business operating here is the Diger and Dial Company. You can kind of see it over there. You saw the smokestacks; it's still in operation. And what they do there is they make containers, and primarily the containers for the whale oil that you find throughout this game. So, very essential service during this time of plague. Calero cigars. Calero is it's not a brand, it's a city. It's one of the cities of Serconos. It's famous for its cigars. So it's kind of like Havana, Cuban cigars.
I expect they're hard at work in there. Best join them. They'll help you get whoever really killed the Empress. I'm sure the Admiral is anxious to meet you. It wasn't easy getting you here. I wouldn't hang about if I were you. From what I understand, time's getting short.
Oh, all right, let's go inside then. Don't want to get Samuel mad at us.
Starting at last, Admiral.
Let's go talk to the
We
loyalists.
found our man. Even after 6 months in Cold Ridge Prison, he slipped out like it was nothing.
Yes. Not surprising. He was the personal bodyguard of the Empress. You've heard the stories.
Yes, I have. It still amazes me that someone could get to the Empress and young Lady Emily.
No one knows the real story, Trevor. We all have our suspicions. We'll know the truth in time.
He's strong and quick. But I hope he understands subtlety as well.
This isn't one of your fancy dress parties. The reality is that we need men killed. Have you ever killed a man?
Only with my wit. But it's a fair point as always. He'll be here soon, and I'm looking forward to meeting him.
We can continue this later, Lord Pendleton. The man of the hour is here. Corvo, I'm Admiral Havelock. A true servant of the Empire, like you. Until the Lord Regent purged those of us who wouldn't recognize his claim on the throne.
And I'm Lord Trevor Pendleton. I represent the nobility in our little group. But we all act as equals here at the Hound Pits pub.
This is a momentous occasion, Corvo. I'm going to come out with it. We've been building a coalition of loyalists, aimed at ending the Lord Regent's tyranny and restoring the throne.
At risk of execution, we're committed to finding young Lady Emily and seeing her crowned as Empress.
We've got big plans, but we can't do any of it without you. We need your skills, your ability in a fight, and in helping us, we're going to help you destroy the men who murdered the Empress.
Sorry, you must be exhausted. We can discuss this further after you've recovered. But before you retire, you should introduce yourself to Piero. He's challenging at times, but his industrious mind buys him that right.
Yes, Piero's as much an artist as a technician. He's going to be crafting the gear you'll need. Go talk to him, and then get some sleep. We can talk more when you've rested.
Okay, so this is Admiral Havelock. Obviously, his first name is
Good
Farley.
to have you with us, Corvo.
Farley Havelock.
Nothing against the others, but there's no substitute for a man who's done his service for the crown.
You can see he's wearing the navy blue coat of, the Navy, and then the gray coat underneath.
Have you talked to Piero yet? He made the weapons we left for you on your way out of Coleridge Prison. Go see him when you can.
It's voiced by John Slattery, known, at least by me, mostly from Mad Men.
You don't know what it means to work with a man who stood at the Empress's right hand. We can't bring her back, but at least we have the man she trusted most. And maybe we can help you right some of the wrongs done to you. This bar is mine, but please, treat it as your home.
I think they dropped down the pitch of his voice for
Piero
this,
still wants to
this
work.
recording.
He's not a diplomat, but he's a brilliant man.
Due to risk of infectious contact, violators will be taken to the flooded district.
Samuel is a blessing. Without him, we couldn't navigate.
Let's move away a bit here. So we actually don't know a whole lot about Havelock. He became a sailor at a very young age. He's not noble. He got to his position by purely on merit, which is not a good thing in this world. It's always better to be noble than to be good at your job. He has said that he resigned because he wouldn't serve under Hiram Burroughs and his illegal reign. or whatever. But if you talk to other sources, they'll say it was more like he actually tried to take over the military, the Navy, after the Empress was assassinated, and he failed, so he was kind of chased out, and now that's why he started this loyalist conspiracy. Not quite as altruistic as you might expect. So now let's go explore around here a little bit. Pendleton's room. Let's talk to Trevor.
Pleased to meet you, Master Corvo. I saw you at court in happier days, but you might not remember. I was once a close ally to the Lord Regent, Hiram Burroughs, back when he was just the spy master. He's one manipulative bastard, I can tell you that.
Let's listen to his dialogue options.
There's something distinguished about you, Corvo. Was there nobility back in your family line?
No.
I wouldn't be surprised. Did you know I'm distant kin to the late Empress and her line? Not close enough, sadly. I'll never be Emperor. Most of the nobility went straight over to the Lord Regent's side after the Empress died. Easiest thing to do. But to me, a noble birth requires a sense of loyalty.
Somehow I doubt that.
This city has fallen into ruin since the plague struck. These poor weepers moaning and bleeding from the eyes. They say there's no cure for the plague once it advances that far. Terrible.
Alright, that's all he has to say. Little painting here showing Caldwell's Bridge, which we'll visit later in the game. And a structure that could be clock tower, maybe some concept art from it. So here's listen to the audiograph.
My furnishings have been installed at last with no small amount of complaining by that antiquated boatman. The others have no idea what it's like to suffer as I have. Speaking of which... Wallace! Please breathe 2 bottles of Dunwall Red, never mind which, and fetch a clean glass. Well, I'll begin again tomorrow.
Take some of his money. He won't miss it. Some loot here. Right, so here's another pieces of loot that's tied to a family. This is an Inchmouth plate. Probably something that they had to sell at some point, or maybe got stolen by a servant. But now it's our loot. 100 coin, very nice. So obviously the nobility is very important in this game. It's not an absolute monarchy, it's more of a constitutional monarchy. There are various levels of nobility. There's landgrave peers, baronial peers, gentry, and then just the non-noble wealthy. And there's a lot of mobility up and down this ladder, so families are always trying to climb higher and to prevent from dropping lower in their ranks. And it really depends on how much land they happen to have at the time, the quality of the land, or just how much wealth they have. And that can also decide whether or not they have votes in Parliament. So the legislature in this world is a parliament, and it's filled with people from various levels of the nobility. And it's not one person, one vote. It's more like one family or one title has a certain number of votes. So the number of votes you have depends on how wealthy you are, how powerful you are. And that's how laws get passed. There's no lower house. There's no House of Commons in this world. Let's continue on this exploration here. This metal door is Admiral Havelock's room. Lots of books. All of its medals. And he's got an audiograph and a log. Let's hear the audiograph.
It seems we've moved to a new phase. Martin's improvisations have borne fruit. The former bodyguard has been freed and is en route to the staging location. The Pendleton's voting block and my military connections. All we've lacked is the ability to project lethal force in a controlled manner against a previously inaccessible... to the point, we need a man who can kill the bastards for us. Corvo is more than capable of that, I have no doubt. N-bomb. Is this off? Switch. Switch, where the hell is it?
And the log? Written log? It has been days since our men were dispatched to stash weapons for Corvo in the old sewer. They have not returned, so I can only hope they succeeded in getting the packages delivered. Piero spent considerable time and resources making those things. If I could find a way to mass-produce them, the Dunwall Navy would secure its place as the dominant force on the globe. But back to Corvo. Can he actually break out of Coldridge, and if so, will he make his way here? I personally give him odds of 1 in 5. Admiralty and the Fleet. Excerpt from a book on naval history. While each of the Isles has some form of naval fleet, none is more envied than that of Bristol, with its long, proud history of great ships and the admirals who command them. Boys come of age in the cities of Bristol, hoping to someday captain such a ship, and family dynasties are made by those captains who track down infamous pirates or crush seditious uprisings, as during the Morley insurrection. In times of war and peace, Bristol continues to innovate at sea. The ship designs of Anton Sokolov himself now represent the highest standard in the whaling trade, allowing crews to haul their kill up over the deck and begin their butchery and processing, even as the ship returns to Dunwall. The crews can be seen working on their latest whale as the ship moves slowly up the Wrenhaven River, coming to dock with one of the powerful warehouse companies such as the Greaves Whaling House. Suspended in the rigging overhead and backlit by the setting sun, the silhouette of one of these creatures makes a moving sight as it cruises to its final resting place in the industrial heart of the capital city. Trunk, some processed whale oil, A Gaffer's Tale, Volume 1. This is a multi-volume book that you see bits and pieces of throughout the game. Excerpt from the travel journal of a young whaler, Gaffer's Tale, Volume 1, or Gaffer's Early Adventures. My sister Nina and I left TYVIA together, saying goodbye to our aunt, the woman who had raised us since childhood. Leaving behind our home city of Yarrow and the cold but beautiful white landscapes we had always known, we boarded a ship for Dunwall. Our parents had left us with a sizable inheritance, and we spent half of this getting to the capital city and establishing a small import shop dedicated to Tyvian furs. So TYVIA is kind of known for exporting luxurious goods. They have to import a lot of basic materials like food and grain, but they export a lot of luxurious items in exchange. Once I'd helped establish Nina in the business, I was free to pursue my dream. Signing on with a whaling ship was the most exciting thing I'd ever done, and I saw it as a means to an end. Someday I would captain my own crew, and eventually with my own fleet of similar vessels. With tears in her eyes, Nina kissed me farewell, and I did not see her again for many months. As an apprentice to the gaffer, I got to see the tracking and killing of the great beasts up close. Nothing had ever fired my spirit so as the wind and pounding waves, racing after a wounded whale being pulled by a skein of cables embedded in its thick flesh. I changed more in those first 7 months than I had in the previous 7 years. Whaling was beginning to put its mark on me so that Nina barely recognized me when I returned, tanned and sinewy with muscle, weather creases already wrinkling the corners of my eyes. But she could see that I was filled with joy, having found my purpose. See how that differs from the next volume coming up. Let's continue on. Here's Wallace Higgins.
If I may, I am the personal assistant to Lord Pendleton, and one of the senior servants at Pendleton House, as was my father. Now I am entrusted with this house, the home of the Loyalists. I have never seen the Admiral fail at any venture. If order can be restored to the city of Dunwall, I believe he can do it. If anyone can get your old life back, it's him.
So he's kind of the typical jumped-up servant who he thinks he's just as good as the nobles that he serves.
I don't need to tell you. If the authorities investigated this place, we would be hard-pressed to explain ourselves.
Oops.
We brought a few trifles over from Pendleton Manor. A touch of home in these trying times. Your room in the loft should assure your privacy. Lord Pendleton was once a close ally to the Lord Regent, but there was a great shuffling of the aristocratic families. My lord was attacked by vipers from all sides. I understand you were once welcome at court before the murder. May I say I am relieved to have another man here who knows the courtly world. This building has stood here for over 3 centuries. As long as Lord Pendleton calls it home, I would defend it with my life. I may well have to.
Little foreshadowing there. So we see some indication that Pendleton's involvement in this loyalist conspiracy is not entirely selfless, as I might have seen
Lady Emily
earlier.
Caldwin was abducted 6 months ago during her mother's terrible murder. Anyone with information leading to the location or return of the daughter of our beloved late Empress is required to speak to the City Watch at once.
Get really sick of those loudspeakers pretty quickly. Lydia Brooklane?
You must be Corvo. I am Lydia, at your service. Your room is upstairs and ready. When they told me who it was, well, I thought you'd be older, like the Admiral. I'm sorry it's so dark. We can't risk being seen. It is a bit romantic, though, isn't it? I used to be the hostess here. Oh, I could tell you stories about that, believe me. You can call on Cecilia for the more menial tasks. It's what she's suited for. I hope the bed's to your liking. Let me know if you have trouble sleeping.
What is that supposed to mean? I think she's flirting with
Attention
us.
all citizens.
Okay, so Litany on the White Cliff. Excerpt from a series of Overseer Invocations by High Overseer Abram Templeton. And I say to you, brothers, it is here that we make our stand as righteous force against the growing darkness. It is here that we unite against the spirits of the unknown that would drag us screaming into the night, never to return to our homes, to our families. Together we will serve as a rod to those who would stray from the herd, for the foggy gray wastes of the outsider. We will burn a bright fire with our virtuous actions, so that others will not lose their way. And to those who choose to wander beyond the walls of our homes, in far places, we will strike at them swiftly before they whisper to their neighbors, filling their hearts with strangeness and doubt. Some typical overseer rhetoric there. I was going to read that in the voice of like a Southern
Curfew
Baptist
extends from sundown
minister, but I
to
chose not to.
sunrise unless you are otherwise authorized.
So at some point, Lydia does say that all of
Violators
her
will
past
be subject
boyfriends
to
have been to Coleridge,
interrogation
so
and detained when
I don't know what
necessary.
she's into there.
The boldest measures are the safest.
Harpooner songs. Excerpt from a book of sea shanties sung by sailors. So, yeah, I'm not going to sing this. Sorry. You can pause it and read it if you want. Obviously, this is a modification of the existing song, What Would You With a Drunken Sailor? The real-world song is much less gruesome in the lyrics. Some of the things that they want to do with the drunken whaler here, well, you can see here. So in the first video I ever uploaded, and I think the only one that has any views, I have a 30-second clip from the second game, from Dishonored 2, where Corvo actually sings the first line of this. It's a little Easter egg I found a couple days after the game released. I think I was the first one to find it. Wooden bathtub here. The Shadow on Bitterleaf. Excerpt from a longer work of fiction. Finding my way by the feeble light of the dying fire, I saw her working. A large needle moved in her hand, following precise, esoteric patterns, knots and loops of seamstress craft from ancient days. Beneath her needle, his body clenched and shuddered, shaking the wooden table. Morbid fascination pushed me closer, until she turned her blank face toward me, resting the needle in his flesh. With a refined tone, she addressed me. So, you are the lover, I presume. You too have been unfaithful, and it is now your turn to be mended. So this is a reference to Bitterleaf Almshouse, which we'll encounter just a bit later in this mission. The Young Prince of TYVIA. I was kind of dreading this one. I don't know if I wanted to read it. Well, I will anyway. Alright, there we go. Excerpt from a theater play. Lord Nathan Bale, shaking with outrage. How dare you, sir, clothed so in my very home? I should hand you over to the watch, depraved Tyvian. Prince Calasar, moving closer. That's a harsh welcome for royalty, my lord. Your daughter treated me with much more hospitality. At last, she has gone out for the evening, leaving me all alone. Lord Nathan Bale, stammering, studying the younger man before him. What are you doing? Leave this house. Go back to your frozen wasteland, pale rascal. Prince Calasar, smiling coyly, reaching out. No need for anger between us, Lord Bale. Is it so wrong for me to be here? As I've proven, I've developed an affinity for you and your family. Lord Nathan Bale, gasping. Oh my. Calasar, your skin is so warm, it burns. Some awful fan fiction there, I guess. 50 Shades of Calasar. So, Prince Calasar was actually kind of an important legendary figure in TYVIA. He was kind of a warrior, poet, conqueror type character, and it was his dream to unite all of the islands into an empire long before the actual Empire of the Isles. And he had managed to conquer all of TYVIA and then all of Gristle, and was about to move on to Morley when he was betrayed and killed. So Tyvians still consider him kind of this legendary figure that they venerate. So when the War of Four Crowns came along, TYVIA was actually the first to join Gristle in forming the Empire. So as a result, they retained a lot of self-government afterward, unlike Morley. A Gaffer's Tale, Volume 2. Excerpt from the Travel Journal of a Whaler in his final years. After more than a quarter of a century, I am done with whaling, too broken to continue. I've seen all the corners of the Isles and made more coin than most men see in a lifetime. But it's all gone. I've lived through an emperor and watched his daughter take the throne. Fair young empress she was, but slain so young. Everything beautiful comes to die. I've eaten in every port of the known world and sailed in the loneliest waters you could imagine. I've seen the cliffs around PANDYSSIA. Even the best of it doesn't give me an ounce of joy. The years come back across my dreams as a line of butchered bodies. Long, sleek, and singing among the waves under the moonlight, only to be speared by ugly, weather-scarred men who'd knife each other for a good pair of boots. Each year I had less time to come home. My tongue forgot the language of small chatter, and those who lived in the cities thought me odd. My sister Nina hardly knew what to say to me during our visits. When she lost her business to the Lord Regent's crooked barrister, I was 100 miles east of Morley, gaff hand frozen from the sleet as we tracked the first bull whale we'd seen in months. I helped her as much as I could, but Nina died in the early days of the plague. None of it mattered. If I'm jaded and bitter, it's because this industry has taken away my dreams. The world has beaten me. So a very different tune compared to Volume 1. So here's the wine cellar and the brewery. Right there.
Attention, citizens of Dunwall.
Okay.
The Old Port District
Yeah, I'm
has
sick
been
and tired
added
of
to
that.
the evacuation list. The Weeper count for the month
You can
of
see the
peace has
third
increased.
floor has been bricked
The
off
Lord
here.
Regent has decreed that
When the
trade
developers were
ordinances
first
will
designing
remain in effect
the
through
Hound
the
Pits
month
pub,
of rain.
they
Stay alert
initially thought
and
it was
stay
too
loyal.
small inside, so they added some floors, and then they thought, well, it's too big now, so rather than have people get lost on all these floors, they just added a third floor and then blocked it off. So here's our room, and here's Cecilia.
The Admiral served in the Navy under the Empress. But something happened with the Lord Regent that drove the Admiral out. If I understand it right. Admiral Havelock made it very clear that we aren't to carry lamps outside. Maybe you haven't seen much of it, but the city has changed a great deal after the Empress died. Since the Lord Regent took over, the city watch is best avoided. Most people try not to go outside at all. We can't leave the pub. I've nowhere to go anyway. My apartment was in the flooded district.
So I don't think we have a last name for Cecilia. I've never been able to find one. It's too unimportant to give her one. I can empathize.
River traffic is forbidden from landing in the distillery district.
All right, you know what?
Due to risk of infectious contact, violators will be taken to the flooded district for treatment and
Don't have to listen to that anymore. It's actually a fun way to dispatch enemies. You drop a loudspeaker right on top of them, kill two birds with one stone. Okay, I think that's most of the lore that you can discover inside this building. So let's go outside and go talk to Piero. And now we finally talk to Piero.
I'll be crafting your weapons and gear. All custom work. For you, I will create the tools of a master assassin. No! This cannot happen now. The tank of whale oil is running. Will you get a new tank from upstairs, please, while I hold this in place? Be careful. The oil's unstable. When it explodes, there's a terrible mess.
This is Piero Joplin, voiced by the highly underrated great actor Brad Dourif.
The dispenser upstairs will provide you with a fresh tank of whale oil. They're heavy, but you are no doubt strong enough to carry one back down here, if you would.
Battery will get you everywhere, sir. I've read that the character models for Piero and Wallace, who you saw before, were actually switched pretty late in development. I don't know if it was intentional or if they did it accidentally, but I think this model matches the character for Piero much, much better. So it was a good switch. There are some little devices we can use here. This device. It doesn't actually do anything. They're just little things you can interact with here. Another map here. So whatever the map is labeled, whatever it tells you it is, what you see on the screen, it's the same map model, it's just the same Isles and PANDYSSIA map. But it's loot, so we'll take the loot. Piero's request is denied. Piero. No, I will not sign off on these purchases. A bag of powdered crystal, TYVIA ore. What's wrong with the metals and crystal? King Sparrow feathers? If you need feathers, sacrifice your own pillow. Maybe at the Academy everything you needed was paid for by Tariff and handed out willy-nilly, but this is my bar, or what's left of it, and we're operating on a budget. We're running low on oil, food, elixir, building materials, and everything else, so you've got to slow down. While I'm footing the bill, I will not approve your purchases unless they're absolutely required. No more copper wire or special herbs. If you need these things, go out and scavenge them. Half the city is in ruins, so no one's going to miss any of the odd crap you seem to need. Admiral HAVELOCK. A second solution. Excerpt from a series of newspaper articles from prominent natural philosophers by Piero Joplin. It is through no fault of my own that the average citizen has expressed a preference for Sokolov's elixir over my own formula, sold as Piero's remedy, a name I did not choose if you must know the truth. The public has spoken its usual message of idiocy, spending their coin as a means of selecting Sokolov's formula over mine, which I believe to be equal, if not superior. Much has been made over the popularity of these concoctions as a means of resisting this remarkable new plague. I say remarkable because this strain works with an efficiency we have not seen in the history of the Empire. This plague, now making its way through the city of Dunwall, is unrivaled in its effectiveness. I have studied it within the blood of those so afflicted, and it is nearly perfect. Elegant, in fact. And while it is true that Piero's remedy and Sokolov's elixir are known to protect the body against the plague equally, my own has properties not fully understood which relate to the mind itself and the spirit. And it is in this way that my formula wins out. Here's where one should pay attention to this context, for you see, Sokolov's elixir, with its emphasis on the brute animal body, is a crass goo better suited for livestock. The subtle and secret variants in the key ingredients making up PIERO'S remedy ensure that it works on the higher functions that separate mankind from the mindless blue-jawed hagfish swimming in the Renhaven River. So it's a nice way of justifying the typical RPG health and mana potions that are red and blue respectively. Get some food, herbs, and let's go upstairs. So this is fun. You see this whirlpool design here, and what is this? It's PIERO'S Door to Nowhere. The door to nowhere has proven to be a safety hazard, but for me this project is an endless source of inspiration. With the proper application of energies, I believe I can transform the door frame into a window of sorts, one that will allow a traveler to cover the distance from my workshop to some distant, arbitrary point in a single step. Currently the step leads to a sheer drop straight down into the courtyard, but in time it will bridge gaps that will boggle the mind. Such work is many years away, to be sure, but if I survive this plague, I'm sure to succeed. So this is an obvious reference to the Portal games. You see that it kind of looks like a portal, and some of the developers had worked at Valve and worked on Half-Life 2, so you'll see some visual inspiration from Half-Life 2 in this game as well. Dead Counter Responsibilities. Excerpt from a manual on new City Watch procedures. Commissioned by the Lord Regent in the face of the growing plague crisis, the Dead Counter is a position that will only be given to officers, usually of junior or middle grades. In most matters of edict or curfew enforcement, these officers will defer to the acting officer on duty. However, any Dead Counter will have command in situations related to the plague and the handling of the dead, including those with late-stage plague symptoms, called weepers in common parlance. Starting in the month of rain, interested officers may apply for the test and, if accepted, for the 2-week training tour. Pay will be administered in coin and rations of elixir and at 1 1/2 normal pay grade. So they actually have to pay them extra to handle the plague dead. Not too surprising. Failed Experiments. Excerpt from a series of lectures on natural philosophy by Piero Joplin. Of course I have attempted to improve upon Sokolov's designs. Of course, and why not? After all, it is likely that his thinking was influenced in some small way by our time together at the Academy. We are all part of a community, striving to unknot the mysteries of the cosmos. Even those among us who possess the greatest minds are often led to a fruitful line of consideration by, how does one say it, our intellectual subordinates. Sokolov is no exception to this, despite the glamour of genius he has cast over the aristocracy. And further, it is true that many of the experiments have failed. No need to gossip about it behind my back in your social clubs and in the very chambers of the Academy itself. Great ambition requires risks. You may laugh now at my door to nowhere, but someday you will not. Your children will likely see it as commonly as you see the electric lamps lighting our streets at night. But a few short years ago, you would have laughed at Sokolov's arc pylon or wall of light. Your laughter, your condescending smiles, they are nothing but evidence of your own limited imagination. Oh, lots of lore. Whale Vivisection. Excerpt from the notes of a natural philosopher aboard a whaling ship. Remarkably, each specimen I had the pleasure of studying during the voyage possessed some minor variance in physiology. On the second leg of the trip, east of TYVIA, the crew hauled aboard a female, some 42 feet in length. I estimate she weighed 35 tons, and the ship sat low, rocking side to side through the night with her thrashing. By candlelight, I took her apart, sketching and taking notes. Against her bellowing, I cut into the massive tentacles around her mouth. Within, I found row upon row of teeth and a baleen running along the upper jaw. Through this broom-like structure, I assumed she filtered food from the water that was too small to be chewed. Yeah, like I said, that's pretty gruesome. So, what can I say? There is a lot of lore in this section, so thanks for bearing with me as we slog through it. Whale Oil Processing. Excerpt from the founder of the Greaves Whale House by Ebenezer Greaves. Out at sea, they secure the beast with hooks, with lines cast from the main ship and from several smaller boats. Buoys keep the whale from diving deep. Once it's caught, a larger hook is driven through the tail, which is used to hoist the creature up through the chute. They moan and bellow for some time as the men get them onto the deck, then lift them into the scaffolding overhead. The ship adjusts its prow and returns to port in Dunwall, where the crew works on the great creature, slicing off the fattiest parts while it still lives. Whale Oil Refilling Station. Sokolov no longer has the upper hand with regard to supplies of whale oil. The good Admiral has paid for the installation of my own system, which will enable me to work in this place. The oil tank dispenser, when activated, will produce an empty vessel for filling. When the empty tank is held near the oil tank refill pump, the magnetic attractor should take the tank and lock it in the correct configuration. Using the lever will begin the refilling process. Once refilling is completed, the tank can be removed and placed in service. Extreme caution must be used in handling the full tanks. They are quite unstable. The system is sound and well engineered. It appears that the Greaves Oil Company has done something correctly, for once. That just tells us how to use the oil refilling tank. And now we have an audiograph.
The Academy teaches that absurd idea that the energy in whale oil arises from the need to maintain life functions at extreme ocean depths. The pressure and the cold are too much to endure without it. I speculate that a human being might, by a process of adaptation, produce high-energy humors in the body. I could build a tank that would slowly increase pressure on a subject over a long period of time, and then observe them for years if need be, to see if the formulation of energetic substances develop. Surely the Empress would be able to furnish me with facilities, subject and the necessary legal amnesty.
Okay, so let's pause from all the reading for a minute. So we just met Piero, and he was a member of the Academy of Natural Philosophy, which is kind of like the prestigious research university here in Dunwall. And Sokolov is currently the head of this academy. It's one of those places often referred to by name in the game, but never visited. It's kind of the main scientific authority in the Empire, founded in 1572 by Erasmus Cooley. It's located on Oxblood Way, as opposed to Blood Ox Way, which we'll visit soon. It has departments with kind of cool-sounding names like the Alchemy Council, the Electromagnetism Council, the Chamber of Smoke and Iron. It's a very secretive institution. You're not even allowed inside the doors unless you're a member, and it's pretty tough to get in. Piero was a member of this academy. He was the youngest graduate actually ever, but he was expelled, likely for butting heads with Sokolov, as you just heard. Interesting note is that the academy outlaws vivisection. So even though they basically do the same thing to the whales to harvest their oil, doing the same thing to animals for science is somehow banned. It's very odd. Alright, let's look at the whale oil station here. So here's the whale oil. And if you want to see how unstable it really is, we can toss it. Oh. Well, I accidentally killed Piero. The Loyalist conspiracy is dissolved. Alright, let's resume here. Okay. So the whale oil, as I said, is a relatively recent innovation, and it's a discovery or an invention of a guy named Edmund Roseborough. Some 20-30 years before the game, he was an inventor, and he had not had much success. No one took his ideas seriously. And one day he was down on the riverbank where the whales were being slaughtered, kind of walking alone and wondering what to do. And at this time, whales were hunted only for meat and blubber. But he noticed that some of the poor that gathered there in hopes of scavenging a scrap of spare whale meat or something were tossing this raw, unprocessed whale oil onto their fires to keep warm. And when they did this, the fire burned higher and hotter for a moment. And when he saw this, he got the idea that this oil could be used for much more than just lighting fires. So essentially, overnight, he invented the idea for harvesting and processing, specifically the whale's oil, and refining it into a very high-energy substance that can power all sorts of fantastical devices, lighting, heating, rail cars, machines, whatever. He became very rich and famous, and transformed the Empire and Dunwall in particular into an industrial society. But things kind of took a nasty turn when, as you might expect, a lot of this technology was put to use in weaponry, used mostly to keep the poor in line, impress the citizens, that kind of thing. And Sokolov came to him with his ideas for new inventions, and it's from Sokolov that a lot of the most dangerous devices we'll encounter in the game come. Roseboro was crushed with guilt over all this, and a few years before the game, he committed suicide. He shot himself with a whale oil-powered bullet. There's actually a series, a webcomic series called Tales from Dunwall. You can find it on YouTube. And it's just 3 short videos with 3 short stories set just before the game starts. It came out as promotional material before release. It's actually very excellent. You should definitely go watch it. It's narrated by Chloe Moretz. And the story I just told you about Edmund Roseboro and the Industrial Revolution is the first one of those. The other stories are, there's one about a lonely boy, I call him the Lonely Rat Boy. He's kind of homeless during the time of the plague, and you hear about what the outsider, we'll meet in a bit, does to him. And then there's another one about Pierrot and the dreams that he has that inspire what we're about to see. So let's take our tank here, because the mask we're about to get actually came to Pierrot in a dream.
Perfect. Now plug it in. Just get it. Perfect. Thank you, Cole. Here, see? The assassin's mask. You're a wanted man, so everyone in the city knows your face, but this mask will mean terror to them. If you just hold still, the fit must be precise. There. Can you see normally?
No, I cannot.
Lens out of alignment. There. Better now?
I wonder if people thought they'd have to go through the whole game like that.
Upgrades for your gear, weapons, munitions. But our situation here is desperate. Scavenge the city for valuables, and I will resell them on the black market. That should give us the money to craft the things you need. Tell me what I can make for you.
Okay, so let's take a look at what we can get. So bolts, normal sleep bolts, bullets. You can see the cartridge there. It's got that blue glow in the back. That's whale oil, so the whale oil propels the bullet. Spring razor, rewire. Get one of those. All your typical weapon upgrades in these kind of games. When I do a non-lethal playthrough, I pretty much go for mask optics. Very useful for me. Some people don't like to use the zoom in in some of the playthroughs I watch, but I do. That and stealth, my main upgrades.
You must be exhausted. I advise that you get some sleep. Your life will get even more difficult soon. You should rest while you can.
That sounds like great advice. Let's go take a nap.
Sleep well.
And with that, I think I'm gonna cut off this first part of the mission right here, and then pick up for the next one, because these file sizes are just getting massive and processing time is just too long. Alright, thanks so much for watching.